Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. And coming up, Afghans now in San Diego fear others hoping to make it to the U.S. might be forgotten as the world's attention shifts to Ukraine. California's drop in K through 12 enrollment due to the pandemic might mean less money for local schools. And how many people does it take to change a city light bulb? The new data-driven approach to speed up repairs around San Diego. But first, an example of how San Diegans will take any help they can get when it comes to high gas prices. Heading into the weekend, AAA puts the local average at nearly $6. Katie Alvarado went to Chula Vista, where people were lined up to catch a break on those costs.
Number one, woo!
To be number one, that driver left her home at 4 in the morning. And by 7, the line for the gas giveaway in Chula Vista was hours long. It kept going and going and going. So long, car batteries died and other cars were on the brink of running out of gas.
That little gas pump thing comes on, that light comes on, what does that mean?
That means you're about to run out of gas right here in line. Help is on the way.
And some simply gave up.
So yes, I'm about to head to work right now.
That is, if she can find a way out. But for many, this is a way out.
It's a blessing, truly.
A chance to get a little relief from the pain at the pump, where $6 a gallon is becoming the norm. Barbara Bruce says she's had to cut way back on essentials.
My gas and electric, I can pay that every other month. Food, of course, we cut way back. I go to the grocery store and I just get upset.
I'm forever grateful. I know my family's forever grateful. But it is a bit of a sacrifice out here in the lines and it's unorganized, but we'll get through it. We made it!
Barbara's niece, Janaea Bruce, already knows how she'll spend the money she saved on this tank of gas.
What that means for my family is that now with SDG&E so high, we can put that towards that bill.
It should not be hard for our elected officials to have a heart and actually feel the pain that these folks feel.
The gas giveaway was organized by Shane Harris and the People's Association of Justice Advocates. In addition to gassing up around 300 cars, they also handed out food boxes from the local pantry. Harris says gas prices are forcing working-class families to make tough choices and called out politicians who promise relief.
We can't wait till July. Promises about rebates potentially coming down the line and what that might look like. By the time you get to July, people are going to be $1,200, $1,500 in the hole. So $400, what is that going to essentially do?
Roosevelt Williams III, an entrepreneur and philanthropist, says he donated to the free gas event because the need in the community is critical.
We're in a state of emergency, and you can actually just look and see the issue and the concern and see that individuals are making life decisions at the pump.
And after hours of waiting, a little celebration is in order.
It might be small to somebody else, but it's major to me.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
One reason that gas prices are so high is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We've all seen the stories of millions of refugees leaving the war zone. A few months ago, Afghans were in the same position. As Steve Walsh reports, some are worried they may be forgotten.
Jawed Karimi watches on his phone a recent news report out of Afghanistan. It shows a group of girls being turned away from a school.
We are also human beings.
He interprets the video for me.
We have a right to education.
5 months ago, Karimi arrived in San Diego with his wife and 2 boys, part of a growing number of Afghan refugees. The world watches as the Russian invasion of Ukraine produces millions of refugees almost overnight. But Karimi and other Afghan refugees are still focused on the plight of their country. Many are nervous that the U.S. will move on, leaving thousands of people who work with the Americans stranded. Some remain in hiding.
They change their house, going from this house to another house to hide them. Yeah. And this is a big concern. If they are forgotten, something bad may happen to them.
Sean Van Diver is part of a coalition of mainly veterans groups trying to bring Afghans who worked with the Americans to safety. Afghan evac has been working with the Biden administration, but Van Diver says the White House has said very little publicly in months.
We're willing to break, to bend over backwards to help Europeans that we haven't served with at the scale that we have with Afghans, and that we've kind of taken our time on Afghans. Folks with whom we served for 20 years, folks who stood by us on the battlefield.
Afghanistan didn't come up during the president's State of the Union address. Van Diver was particularly frustrated after the Biden administration announced that the U.S. would allow 100,000 Ukrainian refugees into the country.
Nobody's saying that we shouldn't be helping Ukrainians. We all agree. What we're saying is that it would be nice if folks who didn't look like us got the same help as folks who looked like us.
Advocates are still waiting for the administration to get behind a permanent status for thousands of Afghans like Jawad Karimi. He was given a temporary status called humanitarian parole. Naomi Steinberg with the refugee aid group Haya says it doesn't fix their situation.
It's not a permanent status in any way. It is not an immigration status. It was very important in that it allowed a lot of people to get here very quickly, and obviously time was of the essence. But what has happened now is that they are here with no path to permanency.
Steinberg says the biggest problem isn't the shifting focus from one refugee crisis to another. She says the previous administration gutted the U.S.'s refugee resettlement program.
It's a lot easier to wreck a program than it is to rebuild. And so that's where we are now, slowly but surely building up. And extraordinary progress is being made, but it feels painfully slow for the individuals who are directly impacted, for sure.
Joved Visserat just received his green card, which will allow him to use his degree in computer programming in San Diego. He was beaten by the Taliban as he made his way to the Kabul airport with his family. This was just days before the last American flight left.
One of them had a 1-meter pipe on their hand, and they were beating on my back and my foot. Yeah. And we escaped from them, and somehow we entered to the airport.
He left behind 2 brothers who also worked with an American company. He says the Taliban has searched their homes looking for proof that they work with the U.S.
Our suggestion is that for the American government is that please help the people or for the family of those who were helping the Afghan government and also the American troops in Afghanistan.
Because for many Afghans, time is running out. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Local health experts are worried that a lack of funding might slow America's COVID response this summer. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says this is happening just as San Diego retools its vaccine strategy.
The Jacobs Center has been delivering COVID-19 vaccines for nearly a year in southeast San Diego, but that's ending Thursday. County officials have been looking at closing their vaccination sites that have low volume and shifting efforts to mobile teams and local providers.
Versus a static site, which aren't bringing in the numbers that we had initially, and definitely have dropped off. And in some situations, in particular Jacobs Center, we're seeing well below 20 vaccines a day.
Denise Foster is the county's chief nursing officer. She says currently only about 10% of the region's vaccinations are happening at county sites. The bulk of them are given out at pharmacies, hospitals, and clinics.
Which is, really looking to go to the model that we've always had, which is where the safety net for those who are most in need and underserved in the community.
Meanwhile, there has been a slight uptick in vaccination appointments here in San Diego. This week, the CDC recommended that those over 50 could get a second booster shot, but there's an issue. President Joe Biden says more pandemic funding is desperately needed.
We have enough supply to give booster shots to those newly eligible individuals. But if Congress fails to act, we won't have the supply we need this fall to ensure the shots are available free easily accessible for all Americans.
The lack of funding is already impacting our pandemic response. Federal officials are cutting state allocations for potentially life-saving treatments, and
without funding, we're not going to be able to sustain the testing capacity beyond the month of June. And if we fail to invest, we leave ourselves vulnerable if another wave of the virus hits.
Experts are predicting some sort of case increase with the more contagious BA.2 variant, now the dominant strain in the U.S.
Yeah, this is incredible to see our funding cut when we have a wave that's just getting going right now.
Dr. Eric Topol is director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute in La Jolla.
This is the last time in the world to cut funding, essential funding, whether it's testing, vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, treatments like Paxlovid pills. This is crazy, and it shouldn't be tolerated. And this is ridiculous complacency, not acknowledging what's going on right now.
State health officials say their priority remains ensuring everyone, regardless of their ability to pay or insurance status, has access to testing and vaccines. They say that COVID services should be provided based on need, not specified funding sources. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Recovery from the pandemic might take even longer for public schools. Funding is tied to enrollment, which has seen a significant drop. Education reporter MG Perez tells us what that means for kids and teachers in the years ahead.
School is in session this week across Poway Unified. That means money, along with the learning happening in these classrooms. Poway Unified School District is among the lowest state funded in San Diego County, and it's not getting better. So making sure students get to class is critical to keeping the lights on and classes staffed with qualified teachers.
Because it flows with inflation, then we hit these years where funding is reduced, programs get cut, and the pendulum swings. So it's always a challenge.
The state is projecting K-12 public school enrollment in California will drop 9% by the year 2030. That means losing more than 500,000 students in the public school system. Look at the numbers in the Poway district. In the 2019-2020 school year, there was a total enrollment of 36,514 students, just as the COVID lockdown started. A year later, that dropped by 900 students. And just last month, it was at barely 35,000 students, a total loss of 1,460 in 2 years. Poway school officials say the reasons include transfers to other districts or to private schools, and families leaving the state for more affordable living. For about 100 years, California has funded districts on how often students show up for school, instead of a total head count of all the students who are enrolled. But the funding formula isn't working anymore for many districts. COVID made it worse. Right now, state legislators are considering a bill that would replace the average daily attendance formula with total enrollment numbers each semester. That could bring in an additional $3 billion in annual state funding for schools to use for attendance incentives. In smaller districts like San Ysidro schools with just 7 campuses, the financial impact is immediate as attendance drops along with state funding. 30% of this district's children are unhoused.
These are the very children that need more resources. They need their resources for not only the social emotional learning, but for food and shelters so that they can have a more stable home life.
San Ysidro and Poway are closer than might be expected when it comes to student enrollment dropping and families who just can't afford to call California home anymore. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And that story that you just watched by MG was one of our most read this week at kpbs.org. So is news of another police shooting in San Diego. One person was injured during a call about a domestic dispute in San Carlos. Another story getting attention is the Marine Corps ruling the son of a former Republican Party chairman engaged in misconduct. And Matt Hoffman's report on an uptick in COVID-19 being detected in local wastewater samples. Companies are having trouble finding qualified applicants for millions of open jobs, especially in tech. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis found an emerging talent pool in Baja, where candidates are easy to find.
Maritza Diaz is the founder and CEO of iTijuana, a company that connects American businesses with Mexican tech workers. Her clients are mostly companies based in San Diego, and all of them seem to be having the same problem.
But I can tell you, every time I ask my potential customers, what is your biggest problem? It's no longer the cost. The biggest problem is just able to hire. They don't care where and how they want to hire because of all of this acceleration. Particularly here in California, when we compete with the big tech of Google's and Facebook's and AWS, it's almost impossible for mid to small companies to hire because every software engineer wants to go work there in the big tech. And it's not just the brand, it's also the salary.
Diaz says everyone is struggling to hire software developers right now, particularly small to medium-sized companies who keep losing talent to tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Traditionally, the tech sector has relied on countries like India and China to fill the labor gap, but Diaz says companies no longer need to go that far.
And for us, being in San Diego, in this beautiful area, when Tijuana is only 20 to 30 minutes down the road, it does not make any sense to go to India or to go to China or the Philippines or anywhere but here.
Tijuana offers several advantages. Developers are highly trained, their salaries are half of what companies would pay in the US, and they avoid logistical hurdles that come with hiring people from half a world away. iTijuana recently opened offices in a high-rise right in the middle of Tijuana's upscale Chapultepec neighborhood. The lobby features marble floors, and the offices have views that overlook the city. The company started in 2019 and has already produced roughly 700 engineering jobs. 2 of those went to Rachel Reyes and Andre Patiño. Both of them graduated from Tijuana's Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, or UABC, in 2020. They were able to find tech jobs within a year.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities here in Tijuana.
That was Reyes, who started as a trainee and now develops mobile apps for a biomedical company. Patiño likes the fact that he gets to collaborate with developers based in San Diego on a daily basis.
So when you actually start working with people from the USA or from India or from different places, you start to learn from them and they start to learn from you. So it's a really fun thing to collaborate with different cultures and different environments.
Both are aware that they're getting paid a lot less than developers who live in California. But they say Tijuana's cost of living is much lower, so for them it evens out. Plus, Patiño says their education is way more affordable.
I've heard the stories of people taking years and years to pay their student loans. Mexico is way more accessible. We don't pay nearly as much as the US does in university, but I do think they do a great job at teaching us.
Diaz doesn't see the US labor shortage getting any better in the short term, and thinks Tijuana has the potential to become Mexico's next big tech hub for a couple of reasons. First, the sheer number of job openings means that visas for skilled labor are no longer viable. The H-1B visa program is capped at 65,000, which is not nearly enough to fill the gap. Plus, companies can save a lot of money by hiring in Mexico.
When you bring the worker here to the US, you're now paying US salaries, right? I don't see any reason why companies need to apply for visas like that when they can actually drive 30 minutes and be there and have hundreds of engineers in Tijuana.
For young Tijuanenses, this means an opportunity to have a career in tech without leaving their hometown.
I think it can go way big, so I think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, but the potential is there. So I think with the right focus and the right work, we can get it to grow into the next big tech hub.
Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Keeping the lights on in San Diego isn't always as easy as swapping out a light bulb. The city is taking a new approach to prioritizing calls for service. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen hit the streets with workers who say it's already making a difference.
We gear up, put our harness on for fall protection.
City electrician Aaron Gambala straps himself into a truck that lifts him up to a streetlight in San Diego's Bay Terraces neighborhood. A resident reported the streetlight broken, but when he runs a quick test on it,
so it works.
The light turns on.
You know what? Go ahead and change it. Go ahead and change it? Okay.
Gambala's supervisor, Derek Mack, says the light is probably on its last leg and is still worth replacing with a newer, more energy-efficient LED light. This light was reported out just under a year ago. And that's a typical wait time for a city that has about 70,000 streetlights and only 8 electricians to maintain them.
Right now, we're functioning on probably half the crew that we would normally have.
Mack oversees the city's streetlight repair division. More than 5,000 streetlights are reported broken in San Diego.
We've been asked to do more with less, and it's nobody's fault. It's just what we have to deal with right now.
Mack says the slow pace of repair is partly due to supply chain delays. It can take 8 to 12 weeks just to get materials. An even bigger issue is staffing. Electricians can typically make more money working in the private sector.
But on the flip side of that, the city is it's a great place to work for because you have your salary is guaranteed. You don't have to worry about getting sent home because it's raining or whatever. You have your job here. You have your job security here.
So each one of these dots on this particular map represents a report that's come in about a streetlight that's been out.
Kirby Brady is the city's chief innovation officer and head of the performance and analytics department. She's showing me a phone app her department is developing for the streetlight repair team.
Again, this is more of an efficiency tool for them so that they understand where they're at in relationship to all of the surrounding work orders.
It could take years for San Diego to fill all of its vacant electrician jobs. In the meantime, Brady is tasked with helping the existing staff be more efficient. She developed an algorithm that helps the team decide which streetlight repairs are the most urgent.
With a streetlight, we can tell how close it is to a school, how close it might be to a park. Of course, these things are important for safety. We want safe routes for people to walk or bike or drive. We also know things about traffic density. So if a particular streetlight is located in an area where there are high volume traffic collisions, that should factor into sort of the urgency of the repair.
The system also identifies clusters of repairs, so the crews can spend less time driving across the city to the next job. Brady admits data alone won't fix the backlog of broken streetlights, but drawing attention to how big the problem is could convince city officials, even voters, to put more money towards fixing it.
In any given year, the city never has enough money to throw at all of the departments to fix things, but our hope is that by spotlighting some of the most frequently requested services by residents, we can start to funnel resources there and improve those service levels over time.
Another selling point for the app, it appears to be improving employee morale. Derek Mack, the supervising electrician, says repair crews now feel like there's logic behind their assignments.
Well, before that system came out, we was jumping around. Whoever was making the most noise, that's where we was going, and whatever upper management centers. But this system right here, I think, is a perfect system for us.
Fixing a broken streetlight isn't always as simple as changing a light bulb. Sometimes the underground wiring is a century old and needs replacement, which can take weeks, if not months. In the meantime, the city plans on evaluating the success of its data-driven approach to streetlight repair later this year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Finally, a return to normalcy for Comic-Con's sister convention in Orange County. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has this preview of WonderCon weekend.
Nathan Seekerman is a kind of superhero. For one, he's cosplayed as Steampunk Han Solo and Captain America. And while he might be disguised as a mild-mannered programmer, he does display superpowers in fabricating spectacular costumes out of thin air.
I'm a programmer as a day job, but programming background lent itself immediately to being a 3D modeler, so that you start to draw your own stuff, you start to print it out. I've got a plan to do something new, unusual, we'll call it a clone Mando.
Doing a mashup of Star Wars characters will also be the topic of a Friday panel he's on.
The Star Wars Samurai universe, and we're going to be talking about the impact of samurai armor culture on the Star Wars universe. One of the things that I'm going to get to talk about specifically is a samurai Captain Phasma armor.
Seekerman was commissioned by Bandai to build a life-sized version of its toy, inspired by the character from The Force Awakens. The stunning creation Seekerman made mixes Japanese armor techniques with do-it-yourself ingenuity and modern materials. The result looks exactly like the toy mashup, but can also be worn 8 hours at a convention. Each project represents a journey for Seekerman.
It's like I've learned how to do something. I've gone and presented it. I've received appreciation for the work and the storytelling. and then an invitation to doing charity events, and then maybe do some commissions.
Although Comic-Con has a reputation for cosplay, Wondercon may actually outdo its sister convention. Comic-Con International spokesperson David Glanzer says the Wondercon cosplay community is great.
Typically on Sunday, when the doors close at 5 o'clock and everybody's kind of being ushered out, the cosplayers stay in the courtyard area, take pictures, mingle with each other. Nobody wants to leave, and I don't blame them.
This weekend's WonderCon is the nonprofit organization's first full-fledged show since the pandemic hit in 2020. It's always been a smaller show than Comic-Con, so you might be able to buy passes at the show. Plus, the Anaheim Convention Center affords WonderCon room to expand.
We have enough space to be able to accommodate a lot more people if need be.
Masks have always been popular at WonderCon, but this year there'll be a mandatory COVID mask requirement as well as proof of vaccination. With WonderCon back, people are also looking forward to Comic-Con's return this summer. But the show's essentially sold out because tickets purchased in 2019 have been rolled over.
As we wrap WonderCon, we'll look more fully into Comic-Con, decide if there's something that we can do.
What we need is a convention TARDIS that's bigger on the inside and can fit more people. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
We hope that you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thanks for joining us.